Simon, thank you so much for joining me today. Obviously, you work with Crowe, an accountancy firm, a nationwide accountancy firm actually, and you're obviously partners of ours, and I thought would be the perfect person to talk to about the end of the furlough scheme coming up in a few weeks, at the end of October, and then what the job support scheme really means for people running their own businesses.
Yeah.
Perfect. So why don't you tell us, what you're seeing at the moment?
Well, I suppose in common with lots of people, what we are seeing is our clients trying to get to grips with the extent to which government are going to support them as we go into the second lockdown period. As the continuing news flow continues to mean that people are nervous about leaving their homes, and people with businesses in the front line, high street and so on, hospitality, are really wondering just what they'll be allowed to do. I mean, I suppose we're fortunate in Kent in that the infection is not particularly prevalent down here, but certainly when I hear, I'm speaking to my colleagues in other parts of the country, there are some parts of this country that have got some very severe problems indeed in terms of demand problems, some particular problems in terms of regulations and what they're allowed to do, and are having to really think hard about how they're going to get through the winter.
Absolutely. And I think, the furlough scheme, absolutely phenomenal when everyone needed it. But I've heard many people refer to it being a bit like a drug for businesses, that now they're going to start weaning themselves off. And I guess what the Chancellor was saying is we need to protect viable jobs going forward. So as that furlough comes to an end and business owners are having to now start making really very difficult decisions about protecting the future of their business, let's talk about the practicalities of the job support scheme. So can you just, in a nutshell, break it down?
Okay, so it's a different scheme. It's definitely a less valuable scheme in terms of the extent to which support is offered. You talked about how the job retention scheme was something a bit like a drug. It's sort of like very easy to take, and it means that difficult decisions were put off. Well, this job support scheme won't be like that to anything like the same degree. It suffers from the same aspects that we've seen actually in some of the other parts of the support that's being offered by government, in the sense that the things are moving a lot. It's it seems to be different every day or every week. What you thought you knew last week might not be relevant for this week. But in a nutshell, for me, the new scheme, you should think of it I think of it in ninths. So they talk about thirds, but then they talk about thirds of thirds, and it works better in ninths actually. So providing you can identify these jobs that are going to be their viable jobs, as they call them, and you're prepared to have your employees in for a third of their time at least. So that's 3 of the 9th there. Then when you think about the other parts of the work, when they might not be in other parts of the day, they might not be in, that would be the 6 9ths. That's broken down to 3 parts. One part of it would be paid by the employer for labour not given. Another part of it, another third, would be given by the government. That's the extent of the government support, and that's 2 9ths. And another part of it, 2 9ths, would be the amount that is contributed to, in government speak, by the employee. So that will be a real pay cut for those people, and that's it really. So you've got to, if you're going to call these people in, they must work at least a third, and they will all suffer a minimum of 2 9ths wage cut. So it's a wage cut for people. Yes, it's government support, but it's not as generous as furlough by a long chalk. And for employers, I think they've got the toughest job really to weigh up, because for every, if they've got a few employees, they'll end up paying, if you like, more for less. So really, they have to take a decision about whether they should be trying to keep those people on, and that is actually possible, and indeed might be the business-friendly decision in many cases, especially if they've got particular skills. I mean, these things are sometimes transferable, but they're not perfectly transferable. And to have people who are available to you, who know how your organisation works, is definitely worth something. So it's not just the mathematics of things, although the mathematics, the longer this goes on, and the longer tail that we're looking like we're going to have in terms of public reaction to this unending stream of bad news that comes out of the television. And if that continues to suppress demand in the way that we've seen, or at least for demand in certain sectors, then people are going to have to take tough decisions about whether to keep people or whether they should be laying them off.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. When you say, you really, really want to cling on to someone because in your heart of hearts that you're going to scrape through, you're going to just about make it through, and you're going to need that person when you come out the other side. Of course, by that time, you haven't been able to pay them. You've had to make them redundant, and they've hopefully gone and found something else elsewhere. So that then says a lot for that business's recovery in the future.
Yeah, if you just go too mathematical on it, then you're in danger of making, let's say, a wrong decision for the medium term. However, you do have to take your own view, really, which is your own forecast of just how long it is that your business will be affected. And let's not forget, there are lots of businesses that aren't affected. There are lots of businesses that are actually trading quite well and quite nicely. But which is not to say that those people who are caught in this are not suffering, because I know that they are. And I've got clients on my business that are in the sector of hospitality at sporting events. There's no sporting events, there's no hospitality at sporting events this year, but next year, it'll probably come through.
Okay, so that's practically what the job support scheme means for businesses. So you've got a whole array of clients, like you say, in different sectors, some doing really well, some doing really badly. Have you got an opinion in just what the outlook might be as this new scheme kicks in, and sort of for the future for business owners, particularly family business owners?
You have to remain, let's say, realistic, but have a bit of optimism about you. I think if you weren't optimistic and you weren't willing to accept risk, you wouldn't be in business at all. So even people that I've got a food manufacturer supplies into retail food. That's hard work at the moment, because you get an unending news flow of people closing units in various places. They probably should have closed some of those units anyway. But eventually you've got to say, this time next year, will it look like this? I don't think so. When the spring comes round, I mean, even, as we go through Christmas and come out the other side, I think there's quite a lot of unreality around at the moment. People have been surprised, and, commentators, and I agree with them. Why is it that in some countries, let's say Germany, you've seen people demonstrating about their infringement of civil liberties, and why has there been so little of that activity in the UK? Why have people been so willing to accept significant restrictions in their lives? And I think it's because there is a part of us, a part of our employees, that actually quite enjoys this. It's a bit different. It's something unusual. It feels like a bit of a challenge, and yet work continues, and people largely are able to earn in a very similar way to they were before. So people have been very accepting of it, but that won't continue if it really starts to hurt people. So as we head into the winter, and if businesses start to take these tough decisions that have been referred to, again and again, and they say, well, I might as well just start to trim my sails now because I can't see an easy way out, then I think you'll see sentiment change. I think you will see a greater insistence by, let's say, government, but also larger employers, to actually say to people, well, you've had your nice time at home, but in fact, your office needs you, your firm needs you, your teams need you. And so let's have you in the office at least some of the time. So I think it's slightly unreal. I think it will be with us for, let's say a quarter or two, but I honestly can't see that this is the way that it's going to be, by the time we get into spring of next year. I just can't. Things will be much more normal, is my personal view.
Okay, and I think at the beginning, when this pandemic first hit in March, April, May, there was this real sense of we're all in this together. The government, no one is left behind, and now we're facing a sort of second wave of the coronavirus, and lives being lost, but also a second wave for business owners everywhere, small and large. And it's less of we're all in this together and more of, right, let's just batten down the hatches ourselves and figure this out ourselves and get through this ourselves. We don't have so much government support now. We need to do what's right for us and our business and our employees.
Yeah, that's right.
Like you say, you wouldn't be in business if you didn't like the risk and the drama, and that's all going to come now. You have to make the very, very difficult decisions.
And if you weren't willing to live with change as well. So just because, I'll take food as an example again and again, because we have quite a lot of food in Kent. Food is quite a big sector for Kent, and let's say the easy sales were taken away from a lot of businesses, earlier this year. But of course, people are still eating, and the same amount of people broadly. So you just have to find another way to get get to market, really. And so I think the clients that have done best out of this are the ones that have been most flexible, and I don't, so most willing to not just sit back and wonder when the phone's going to ring next. It's like been to get off and actually, improve their online offering, improve their delivery offering, improve their logistics, work on their supply lines, and these are the people that do that.
And where those changes will be sustainable. They're not just reactions here in the moment that you'll go back to the old way of working. It's actually finding a better way of doing things that's sustainable for the future.
In some cases, yes. And I think you've seen this, this acceleration, or let's call it the deceleration of things off the high street and onto online. That's clearly been something that's been coming for a while. There's clearly been an imbalance in the way that the different sort of sectors are taxed to business rates in particular. It's been, if you like, a structural imbalance that's been driving things a certain way, and so there's going to have to be a repurposing, really, of these public spaces. But I think they will come back, and they will be repurposed, because human beings are basically social. This is an unusual circumstance, and certainly speaking, personally. Here, yes, we're happy to run, Zoom meetings, and we can do that. But it's better to have an actual meeting, and that remains true.
I do miss sharing a dodgy coffee with you at some networking do, Simon.
Dodgy coffees, little asides, rubbing into people, the unexpected meeting, all of that. All of that it's all been made rather formal by this life that we now inhabit, and I think as I say, I think it will come back. It will come back.
Okay, brilliant. So I think for any business owner out there, in particular family businesses, where that sense of responsibility is so huge on your shoulders, particularly if you're 3rd, 4th, 10th generation, I think going forward, the end of the furlough, the new job support scheme, there are going to be some difficult decisions to be made. We're going to lose some businesses. We're going to see new ones sprouting up, or new ideas. But it's also good to know as a business leader that there are people out there who can help you through this. And I guess you guys at Crowe have been completely invaluable to our audience, our membership, people who just want to have someone they can trust to talk to. So thank you for sharing your, what's been happening with your clients and your own opinion. And I would urge anyone to just sort of pick up the phone and have a chat, because there probably isn't anything you haven't seen over the years, is there, Simon?
Well, I suppose when you get a bit, on in your career, you've seen a few things. You've lived through a few downturns, and like you say, there's always going to be someone will go. That just happens from time to time anyway. And I suppose if you're in business, to be in business, you need to have a sense of optimism as well. And like I say, most people are working, most people are getting paid, so that a lot of consumption is still there to be found. Just got to work a bit harder to find it.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Simon.
All right.